Hello, and welcome to another Profiles of Endurance. I'm Father Scott Vanderveer. 91-year-old Joan Spelter of Schenectady is a licensed counselor still in private practice. She's also the mother of 5 very successful and accomplished children. And all of this would be impressive enough, but it is even more so when you realize that for many decades, Joan has suffered from an emotional disorder that at one point made it nearly impossible for her to function. She talks with me about how her life has turned from a living nightmare to a life that is beyond her wildest dreams, and how she got there through faith, recovery, and a lot of hard work. Listen as this matriarch shares her wisdom with us all. Joan, I'd like to start by asking you a little bit about your childhood. Your childhood was not easy, and I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about what growing up for you was like.
Well, if we talk about my childhood from the time I was, real small till I was about 14, maybe 15, it was pretty rough because I was an only child and my mother happened to be struck with the disease of alcoholism. And therefore, my home life was constantly disrupted. I lost my father when I was 5 years old. He died of a heart attack at 40. And so from then on, my mother was certainly not in a very good frame of mind. And she was searching for someone else, and she found them. But however, he was not certainly a person he was an alcoholic as well. So my life at home was pretty rough. My mother and stepfather were constantly fighting, and it was just not a very happy existence, But again, the good Lord always gave me something to kind of take away the pain. And when I was about 7 years old, my father's brother decided to send me away to camp, a Catholic camp, for 2 months, July and August every year. And it was the most wonderful, wonderful thing that could have ever happened. And so I did that for 10 years, actually. I went away for 2 months every year.
And that was your oasis that got you through the other 10 months.
And we had morning mass every day. We had, it was, and the most lovely people I met there, wonderful girls from some of them too had their struggles, but they were just beautiful people. And I just was surrounded by just a wonderful environment, at that time. In the summer, I had to, of course, leave there at the end of August and go back home.
Oh.
But, that went on until I was, as I said, older, when I took up with a girlfriend and was able to begin to go over to her house and spend time with her family. And her mother was so wonderful. She accepted me and her brothers, and I could go there. That was my oasis from everything. When things got rough, I would go over to her house. And laughter, there was a lot of laughter and a lot of faith in Jesus there that really, really, really was healing in my life,
Well, it sounds too like starting at a young age, maybe early high school, you began the practice of going to Mass every day.
I did.
Wow.
Eileen and I would meet in the morning. We had 7:15 Mass at church, and we go to Mass before we left for school. And it was a practice. Now, I don't know what kind of, if I really concentrated on what I was doing, who knows? I don't even know. But I did go to Mass every day, and it was, to me, a very important part of my life, However, at the same time, when we were on our way to high school, we started playing hooky from school, going to Times Square and seeing all the great movie stars that used to appear on Broadway, right? At the Paramount, Frank Sinatra and everybody.
Oh. So,
it was hard to resist because our high school was in Manhattan, and we used to pass 42nd Street, the station, every day.
Oh.
And so every now and again, we just get up and get off the train and go to the movies.
It was too tempting not to get off that train.
Tempting. It was. And when I look upon it, I'll tell you, we used to go over that a lot, laughing about some of the stuff we did, you know. I mean, I guess it wasn't really that nice, but to us, it was really, Eileen, too, came from a home where she lost her father when she was young. So, I mean, she too, had her own struggles, you know.
Yeah.
But she was a dear, dear friend and a very beautiful woman, you know.
Now, did you make a decision that you wanted to meet a good Christian man and wanted to arrange your life that way, or was meeting your husband more of just a fluke? Did you make a decision to be in the right place to meet?
Oh, I did. Yes,
you did.
I did. Yeah. My girlfriends, after Eileen left and went in the convent when she was 18, and then came back out and ended up in a Catholic lay group. However, during the time when she was away, her mother and I would go over to New York to a church to Mass there, and we'd attend a novena to the Infinite Prayer. And I remember writing out the slip every few weeks, you know, and putting it back in for this novena. And then I would always put on it, I want to meet a good Catholic husband, one who can get me to heaven and whom I can get to heaven.
Oh.
And you know, it was interesting when I finally did meet my husband, that's another part of the story, but he told me he loved me the first time in that church.
Wow.
Yes, yeah. But he said, I want to tell you before the Blessed Sacrament that I love you, you know.
Wow.
And that was really powerful, you know. So God was definitely always such an intricate part of my life, you know. Taking part in everything that I did. There was always there was the trial and the cross, but then there was this wonderful, you know, intercession of the Lord, you know, that brought with it healing and peace, you know. It was a wonderful thing. Really.
Wow, wonderful. Well, now, his name is Bill Horgan, and you married him.
Yes.
And although
I met him in this Catholic lay group, he was, in fact, that's why I joined, because my girlfriend said there were holy boys in this group.
Holy boys.
Holy boys. So, because I wasn't interested in joining, and then I thought, gee, maybe I ought to. I was about, I think, 19 or 20 at the time, and so I joined, and this was a beautiful group founded by a Vincentian priest, and we used to meet twice a month at a convent that the nuns had, and we would have a meditation by the priest, and then we would discuss the meditation, you know, and then we got involved in missionary work over on Welfare Island in New York, and visited the sick poor, and it was really a beautiful thing. Wow. And that was where I began to meet my husband, you know, and got to know him there, you know, because he was doing the same thing, you know.
Now, from the sounds of things, God brought you together, but your first years of marriage certainly were not what people would call easy.
Oh, no.
What was that early time of marriage like? What were the struggles that you faced?
Because I, too, had the Cinderella complex, you know. I thought I'd get married and live happily ever after, right? That's kind of that naive way we always looked at life at those days. And so when I got married to him, the reason we got married, the time when we did, was because his mother was in the hospital. She had a stroke, and he needed someone to take care of her. And so we were planning to get married, but not that soon. So we got married, and then we only took a weekend honeymoon, came home, and right away his mother was there, and I had to care for her. She could walk, but she was paralyzed on one side, you know. She would drag her leg, and she'd walk with a cane. She couldn't talk. She could just kind of shake her head. She could understand everything, you know, but she couldn't express it. So anyway, you know, I was the klutziest girl because my mother, of course, never trained me in how to keep house or how to do anything. I had no domestic skills to speak of, you know. And so, I mean, I had to learn everything from the ground up. And, of course, whoever lived with me had to put up with that, too. So, anyway, as it was, I was working, trying to, of course, be a good daughter-in-law. But I would, if I would forget toast for her in the morning, she would take it seriously. And then she would go on a hunger strike. And she wouldn't want to eat or take anything from me.
Wow.
And Bill would have to intercede. And it was always something like that, till finally, and then I got pregnant right away with my daughter Mary, and my husband, of course, was working. At that time, I think he was working late. He'd come home at 9:30 at night. So, all that romantic stuff about marriage, forget it. That was gone. I mean, this was just hard work. And we even had a washing machine that had a wringer.
Yeah.
And I had never used one of those, so I would use it. I used to wash the clothes in the bathtub, making life just a little easier, right, for myself.
Wow.
So it was crazy. But anyway, at one point, my mother-in-law ended up in the hospital because of one of these hunger strikes, and so I made up my mind. I'm going to convince this woman that I love her. So I decided that every single day, as I said, I was pregnant with my daughter, I would go on the trolley over the bridge, go down onto Welfare Island, and go to the hospital there and visit her, which I did every single day from August till my daughter was born in December,
Wow.
And I would bring her a house dress and sit and talk with her for an hour maybe, and that's how I was convinced that if that didn't work, nothing would work,
Yeah.
And so when my daughter was born, my mother was in the hospital. She had a hemorrhage, and she was in the hospital. And so there was 2 hospitals on Welfare Island my Bill had a visit, and then me in another hospital where my daughter was born. So it was wild.
Oh.
And my stepfather, of course, he's in between there, causing all he was worried about was putting up the Christmas tree. And my husband, that was the last thing he had on his mind,
Oh.
So anyway, it was a wild time. And then right after that, my stepfather took sick. And that was he died in April of that next year. And then the following year, my mother took sick and died in March of the following year. And then the following year, in February, my mother-in-law died on our wedding anniversary, our 3rd wedding anniversary.
I can't imagine. It's such a combination of hardship and feelings of rejection.
And I was expecting my 3rd child when she died. Because I had my daughter Joan was born in 57, and then my mother died in 58. And then Bernadette was born in 58. She was born in July. So, I mean, it was like, and then I had an uncle who I loved dearly, like a father, who lived in New Jersey with my cousin, who I loved dearly, and they decided to move to Ohio.
Wow.
Well, that was like total abandonment. I had nobody then. Nobody. Because I didn't have any brothers and sisters. I had no other relatives. So I was really pretty much alone, So it was something.
I can't imagine. So it's an unbelievable combination of things for a young woman. And like you said, your support had always been from the church and from faith. It wasn't easy to depend on family for support. So these things start to pile up, and they pile up and up and up. And then how did that start to show up in you in ways that were getting to be really difficult?
Yeah, not good. I started having anxiety attacks, and that would leave me anxious and fearful. And I remember the first time I noticed that somebody told me something about cancer, and I thought I had it. I started thinking, oh, gee, I bet I got that, And then I would just build up, and then I started thinking, we lost everybody 11 months apart. I wonder who's going to be next. And then I thought, well, maybe it'll be me. I'm not a good mother. I don't do all the things I should be doing for my family, I started finding fault with everything I did. And then from there, it just went on. Finally, I said to a friend of mine, I think I don't know what's going on. I was telling her the story, and she said, you better watch out. You might have a nervous breakdown.
Oh.
Well, that's all she had to say, Then I started getting, what if I harm my children? What if I harm myself? And then I started fearing knives and sharp objects, and it just went on and on and on like that. I was like that, honestly, for 2 years.
Oh.
And during that period, I didn't even tell my husband half the stuff because I was afraid he'd put me in a hospital,
Yeah.
I went to priests for help, but they didn't have the skill. They did not know how to help me, you know. They would do what they thought was right, but in the end, they would tell me, they get mad at me, you know.
Mm.
You better control your thinking. That's not good. That blah blah blah. Well, anyway, it just added to my guilt, and it was like I had always had what I felt was a close relationship with the Lord, and then all of a sudden, I felt like every time I thought about God, I felt guilty. I had this overwhelming guilt because of my thoughts. And so I would say, God, I know you're there, but I can't think about you, you know?
Yeah.
I know you're there. So I started saying novenas, and my main novena was to the Sacred Heart. And I had the family dedicated to the Sacred Heart. And anyway, after about 2 years, and I wouldn't go to a psychiatrist. I was scared to death of psychiatrists. I heard about a priest. Don't even ask where I heard it. I can't even remember. Over at St. Francis of Assisi in Manhattan, who was a psychologist. So I called up and made an appointment. I went to him, and I only saw him once. And he told me, he said, you have an anxiety neurosis. You need to give up the rhythm method, because we were practicing the rhythm method. And he said, you need to go to a program that meets here twice a week called Recovery. And, well, that's the story of what happened in my life. I started going to recovery, but it meant, that's another part of my story, because I had to get a babysitter because there was nobody to watch the babies at night. My husband came home late. I had to get a babysitter. I had to leave the house about 7:15, go on the elevated train into Manhattan, which took about 20, 25 minutes, get off, go to the church, go to the meeting at 8 o'clock, come out about 10 o'clock, go to what we call mutual aid at a cafeteria, and talk with everybody after the meeting, picking their brain about everything, you know, and then leave at 11 to make an 11:03 train home, and walk home scared to death from the train to my house because I was all alone. I did that twice a week.
Wow.
And because the first meeting I went to, the leader said, before recovery, I had the fear of this, of that, naming all my fears. And I thought, she said before. That means she's over them. If she got over it through this method, then I can. I can get over it. I know I can. But I knew I'd have to put in a heck of a lot of work. And I remember working the program for a while. And finally, one day on a subway train, I was reading the ads when all of a sudden it dawned on me, for 5 minutes, I hadn't had my obsessive fears. And I remember thinking, I'm getting well. I'm getting well. I was 5 days. If I could be 5 minutes without him, I could be 10 minutes without him. And honestly, Scott, that's how I got well. 5 minutes at a time.
Joan, this is so helpful for people. This is so helpful. Let's take some of the things that you just said and talk about them a little bit, because I think there might be some people listening to this right now who cannot believe there's someone who understands, because you're describing what their experience is.
Sure.
And they can't believe it. So one of the things that you're saying that sounds really important is, for several years, when you say you had 5 minutes looking at the ads and you realized I didn't have my obsession for these 5 minutes, it's maybe important for people to hear. Every waking minute for those years before that, you were thinking about these fears.
Oh, the fears just came on, yes. Because what I learned in recovery was that temper, it produces tenseness, and then tenseness produces these symptoms. So what I had to learn was how to give up the self-blame, the self-pity, the self-disgust, which was hard because I had built up a belief system around it. And I didn't have so much the angry temper, which would have been temper at fate, temper at my husband and all. I didn't have that too much, but I did have the fearful temper, which is that self-pity, the self-blame that brings the lowered feelings, the depression, and that's what I was working on all the time. I'm not wrong. Excuse me, Scott. I gotta take a sip of water.
Certainly.
I'm not wrong. The outer environment isn't wrong. I'm not wrong. The outer environment isn't wrong. And then we learn to give ourselves a mental pat on the back. That's good.
Yes.
That's good. Every time I did that,
Wow.
So I kept it simple, even though I had a lot of tools to use. But I didn't. I studied the books that Dr. Lowe gave us, and I made myself go to work on this thing because that was my lifeline. I knew this was how I'm going to get. There was no medication then. There was no, tranquilizers. There wasn't anything.
So this group still exists to this day. It was
Oh,
founded
yes.
by a Dr. Lowe, and the name of it is Recovery International.
That's right.
So you would tell people, if someone right now is just in awe of what you're saying because it expresses what they're feeling in their life, you would suggest go to the internet and look up Recovery International right now. There's probably a group near them.
Yes, recoveryinternational.org.
Got it.
Not .com.
Okay.
It's .org. And if you get that, you'll get the whole website, and it lists all the meetings throughout the country, throughout the world. There's groups all over, and then they would get all the information there that they needed. There's even phone meetings, so if they didn't want to attend a meeting locally or somewhere, because in the beginning, a lot of people have stigma.
Sure.
They're embarrassed,
Yeah.
And now there are Zoom meetings. For instance, I lead 2 Zoom meetings every week.
Wow.
And they're wonderful. In fact, my group, we used to go to a church. They don't want to go back to the church. They want to stay on the Zoom meetings.
Wow.
Because they're really nice. I mean, you don't have to leave the house, It's just comfortable,
It is.
And so it works out really well. In fact, at my group now, I have someone from Florida who used to be in my group up here, moved to Florida, and really missed us, but couldn't come, to the meeting. Now he can come because of the Zoom. So I see him every 2 times a week now. Anyway, that's where they get the information would be on the website,
Wonderful. Joan, a couple other things I'd like to go into just a little bit, if you would.
Sure.
You said, one of the things you said is something that I think we hear from people quite often who are in recovery from some sort of mental, emotional, or physical ailment. And that is, you said, I knew it would be a heck of a lot of work. Talk to me about what you mean when someone is recovering from an emotional disorder. What do you mean by work? That might be a new concept for people.
Yeah, that's a good question, Scott, because first of all, I learned in recovery that my symptoms were extremely distressing, but they were utterly harmless. Nothing was going to happen to me because of these symptoms, because of these thoughts or feelings. They were the harmless expression of a nervous imbalance.
Wow.
Now, I had to be convinced of that, of course, because I didn't believe it, of course, when I came into the program, I was frightened to death. But, I can tell you, I've been in the program 60 years, and this is true. There is no danger whatsoever.
Wow.
And so, but it takes a while. Now, beliefs are stubborn and they're obstinate, and they take practice. So you're going to try and fail, try and fail till eventually you have trial and success.
Yeah.
Now, that's why, even though there's a book available, it's not enough. The meetings are critical. You need to be attending meetings, and I would recommend 1 to 2 meetings a week. If you can go to 2, great. The more the better, especially in the beginning. Now, like I said, we have other phone meetings you can attend from the website. You can learn about them. But anyway, the important thing is that you're exposed to hearing other people speak about the same issues that you're dealing with,
Yeah.
And see that they're getting help and they're getting better. And that's what gives you hope then,
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And
the spotting tools in recovery are beautiful. Dr. Lowe has a preponderance of spotting tools. That means phrases that we change the way we think now to a new way of thinking. This is cognitive behavioral therapy. So you're changing your thinking. But you needed to know, how do I change it? What do I say now? I don't know what to say, right?
Yeah.
So but he gives you the tools. He gives you, for instance, there's no right or wrong in the trivialities of everyday life. Excuse and don't accuse. Endorse yourself. Spot your impatience. We are the impatient patient. Practice humility instead of self-importance. And anyway, I could go on and on because there's just I know tons of spotting principles, but you don't need them all. You only need one or two of them every day to help you get through a situation. For instance, calm begets calm. Temper begets temper. So if I can just stay calm, right? Not attach fear or danger to things. So it's an excellent program, Scott. I mean, you got on my favorite topics. So.
I love it. I love hearing you. I love the passion with which you speak about it because it gave you your life back.
Oh, it did. It did. I wouldn't have been getting through my husband's illnesses and all that he went through, and just everything in our life that took place,
Well, one more thing I'd like to ask before we move on, because I think one of the things that is important for people to know is you're at this point in your life, it's great to speak with you looking backwards at the big picture because you finding Recovery International did not mean that life was happily ever after. It didn't take away problems. It gave you tools. It didn't stop life from being challenging. But and there's a lot more to come. But before we go there, one more question, because I think you brought up something very beautiful and important. There are many people who have left their church because they made an appointment with a priest that wound up being disappointing for them.
Yes.
And you said something really powerful. Priests are very capable of disappointing someone in a one-on-one setting, partially because people may expect that because someone is a priest, they are an expert at all things.
Right, exactly.
And you were saying those priests didn't have the skills in that area. First question is, what would you say to someone who has made an appointment with a priest? Maybe it took a lot of courage to make it. And they made the appointment, and then the advice they got from the priest didn't resonate or made them feel perhaps maybe even a little guilty, or it was just very clear it wasn't helpful. What would you suggest they do? Because many folks at that point leave the church and leave the practice of their faith, which makes their life even harder.
It does. One of the things I want to say is that we're not dealing with a spiritual problem here. Okay? We're dealing with a mental illness, just like a physical illness. If you had a broken arm, you wouldn't go to Father John and say, Father John, could you fix my broken arm,
Yes.
Because you knew that you need a doctor. You need an orthopedic doctor to take care of this problem. Well, the same thing is true of mental illness. And people don't want to even use that term. But in a sense, this is what it is. And it means that we have an imbalance. That's all it means. I have a nervous imbalance, and I have to restore the balance. And I need help with it. I need help by people trained to help me with it. And I can't put that burden on a priest or my husband or my family or anyone. Yes. That this is strictly, or all these self-help books that we end up buying thinking, oh, well, I'll buy a self-help book and that'll get me well, That's not doing it. I'm sorry to say, you have to bear discomfort to gain comfort. It doesn't come easy. Yes. You have to bear the discomfort, but when you gain the comfort, it is worth every bit of effort you put into it,
Those are powerful words. You're helping me right now just to hear that. You have to be willing to bear discomfort to move through it to get to the comfort.
Exactly.
And is that what you mean when you say do the work? That's related to doing the work, isn't it? Because if you can't bear the discomfort, you will give up, but you won't feel.
And again, that's why the group is so important. Yeah. Because the group gives you the will to keep bearing that discomfort. And then you start seeing when people do, because we give examples at the meeting. Now, the meeting has the example part has 4 parts. The situation, how I worked myself up, and then how I applied the recovery method, and how I would have acted before recovery.
Yeah.
So the person, when they hear an example, hears those 4 parts, and they see how this person has grown. Now, when they came into the program, for instance, if I give an example today, I can say before I came this recovery, I would have had these symptoms and these symptoms and these, I could have listed a whole ton, but I don't have them anymore. And now people hear that and they go, oh my gosh, because you're so embarrassed to tell anybody about this.
Yes.
You think you're always the only person that feels like this.
Yes.
Nobody else knows how I feel,
Yeah.
But when you find out, you're not alone. And there's people getting well.
Oh.
And that's exactly what I had to find out. But it took work. And the work also involves studying the writings of Dr. Lowe.
Yes.
We have 2 books that we use, Mental Health Through Will Training and Manage Your Fear, Manage Your Anger. Those 2 books contain everything you need for the program.
Wow.
And when I couldn't attend the meeting, because when I got pregnant, I did get pregnant with my children while I was going in the early days. And when I did, my husband couldn't watch the newborns when they were born. So I had to stay home, and I would start really studying the literature, And that was the best thing I ever did. And I would have to go, because I had no memory. I was obsessing all the time. So I had to say things over and over to myself,
Yeah.
But then it would come. So go ahead, honey. I think I'm taking.
No, I love what you're saying, because what you're saying there that I think is also helpful, that I want to put an exclamation mark next to for people, is when you had 2 additional newborns and you weren't able to go to meetings, some people would say, well, now I can't work the program. And you said, no, I will find a way. I'm going to turn to literature. When I can go to meetings, I go to meetings. But when I can't go to meetings, I don't abandon the program. I don't leave my path. I find a way to stay connected.
And we have also the 5-minute phone call, which is excellent, where we call a veteran member of the group, and we give an example over the phone. And then they spot for us. They help us like they would at a meeting.
Wow.
So that's a major help. And I used that a lot. I did that a lot during that period,
Do you know one of the things that just blows my mind too, even though, can you believe this is all free for the taking?
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing?
Free will offering. And we've had a very hard time in convincing professionals to send people to us over the years, And because my feeling is we could work really well with a professional,
Yeah.
That if they have the patient's best interest at heart, when the patient uses up their time with them, or even while they're going to them, if they sent them to us, the patient would be better able to work with the professional.
Yeah.
Because we never tell them not to go to the professional.
Yeah.
The professional, they have to listen to them,
Yeah.
We know we're a lay organization,
Oh, it's remarkable. So thank you for taking the time with that, because I think this will be a part of our conversation that I'll bet you there's people that go back and listen to it again and again, because it's going to give them the courage and the encouragement they need to make the step that they need to make. So,
oh yeah, I hope so.
Oh, I hope so too. So now this is a perfect spot to move on, because now it's time to say you were given your first set of tools. And life kept moving on, and life went through some major changes in this next chapter, because you left the city. You were a city girl through and through.
Right.
Talk to me about how that changed. What was the circumstance that brought you upstate?
Well, excuse me, I'm sorry. Just 1 second. My husband came home one day and said that he had been offered a job upstate. Actually, he could have even gone into Canada, but he was going to be selling for Moody's Investor Service, their books at that time. I mean, now it would have been on a computer, but this was back, in 1968. So it was quite a long time ago. Anyway, I immediately said yes, because we had always prayed that God would help us get out, because we had debt. We had a loan that we took out when we got married, and we still had it. We had 5 children, and we were just like, we were struggling bad. We did own the house that we lived in, We were paying, of course, the mortgage on it. And my mother had left us enough money for us to buy that house, $1,500, I think it was, or $2,500 we put down. And so, anyway, what happened was we came upstate, and I had laid a fleece. You want me to tell the part about that, where I laid a fleece before the Lord?
I think that's fascinating because it actually, there's a biblical background to this, right?
There is. Anyway, I laid this fleece before the Lord. I said, Lord, I want a house under 20,000 with 5 bedrooms. Well,
Imagine.
that was like a joke. Everybody was kind of laughing at me, and I said, "No, that's what we could afford. A house under 20,000, with 5 bedrooms." So anyway, we came up, and we have friends in Niskayuna here, and so we stayed with them at first, and then we went around with a woman from Capital Homes up here, and she took us to several homes over near the park, but their homes were big old houses with a lot of rooms in them. I did not like them at all. And they were in the 30,000s and that. And I said, no, we just couldn't afford that. So anyway, by Sunday, we had kind of given up. We said, well, looks like we're not going to find anything now. So we went back to their house, and about an hour later, we get a phone call, and it's from the real estate woman. And she said, well, I have a house that I didn't show you that we just got put on the market, and it's owned by Seal Test, and they priced it to sell. So if you want to come over, I'll show it to you. So we came over, and when I first looked at the house, it looked like a Cape Cod. And I thought, well, gee, this don't look too big, So we came in, and it turned out this house had 5 bedrooms. And only 1 bathroom, though. But 5 bedrooms. So anyway, she takes us all through the house, and then she takes us down through the basement and out the back door. Now, when we went out the back door, Henry, my husband, Bill, and I, we could not believe our eyes. There was this gorgeous property. I mean, gorgeous. It is. I mean, if you could see it now, you wouldn't believe it, Scott. It's beautiful.
Oh.
And it's like, at that time, it was 4 lots. 4 lots. And the house was on one, and then there was another lot for the garage and so on. And anyway, nowadays it's 3 lots. They combined 2 of them for the house and the garage, So anyway, when we went in the house, I said to the girl, wait a minute now. I said, well, how much is this, Oh, she said, this is $16,900. So I said, $16,900. Well, Bill and I looked at each other, So anyway, we went back to the friend's house, and in 5 minutes, we made up our mind. We called the girl and said, we're going to take the house. So she said, oh, I forgot. I made a mistake. It's $16,500.
Oh, my.
So we got this house for $16,500. Can you believe it?
Unbelievable.
And it was just unbelievable. Well, anyway, that was the start. And, of course, that didn't mean everything we lived happily ever after. We got this house, and then we were all, of course, all excited. The kids, of course, and myself. And then my husband took sick.
Oh. He
was in the hospital. He had pancreatitis, which is a very serious disease. And he was on the critical list. And the real estate woman was asking them to hold the house for us because she said, we're a wonderful family with 5 children. We would really love this house and this and that. So they put off trying to sell it to somebody else, So then finally we got worried it was a closing. So I brought the papers into the hospital for my husband to sign. I was a nervous wreck that he wouldn't be able to even sign it, but he did. And then my oldest girl, who was then about, I think, 13, she and I took the bus up to Schenectady, and because we didn't even have a car then. And we came up to Schenectady, and we signed the closing. I signed the closing papers here.
Wow.
So the house was now ours, all right? So now Bill finally comes out of the hospital, and he has the gout. And then it's the day to move, all right? So my friends from up here came down, took the children in their car, and it took all the dirty wash I put through in the trunk, and went up towards Schenectady. Bill and I were getting ready to leave when the phone rang, and the movers said, oh, we just went out on strike.
Oh, my.
and I'm thinking, oh, they're going to solve it right away, they're going to, but they said, yeah, well, we're out. So we waited a little while, and we didn't get any word that they had solved it. So then Bill and I took whatever suitcases we had and threw all the kids' clothes and stuff and our clothes in it as much as we could. And now you got to remember, Bill is limping. He can't hardly walk with the foot that has the gout.
Wow.
So we go over onto the Port of Authority, and we were a sight. I'm pushing the bags ahead with my foot. He's walking with a cane, limping.
Oh.
And we get on the bus, and it's snowing. It's March 1st. It's snowing. The wind's blowing. The bus is shaking. I said to Bill, you think God's trying to tell us something? So anyway, that's how we started out. And the strike lasted for 6 weeks. So we lived here in Schenectady on cots and sleeping bags, and we sat on metal chairs that the priest gave us.
And Joan, for those who've lost track, you had 5 children at this point.
Oh yeah, we had 5. I had 2 more after I joined recovery.
Isn't it amazing? I mean, this is a real trial.
But my kids were my joy, though, Scott. I gotta tell you, they were always the joy of my life. To this very day, of course. But they are beautiful. I am blessed with 5 beautiful gems. They are beautiful. So anyway, as it turned out, though, we were here for 6 weeks, and I can still remember the day they called and said the strike was settled, and they were on their way. Then we got another phone call. I can still remember Mary Teresa coming out and saying, Ma, the movers are on the line. So I came in and they said, oh, our truck broke down on the Long Island Expressway.
Oh.
They said, this was like Palm Sunday, I remember. They said, I don't know if we can make it. I said, you better make it. We have waited 6 weeks for this stuff. We will be here whenever you get that truck ready. I don't care if you get here at 2 a.m. We'll be here. And that's what happened. They arrived at about 1 o'clock in the morning and unloaded the truck. And all my kids ran to sit on the couch because they'd been sitting on metal chairs for 6 weeks. It was something else. So anyway, that was the inauspicious, beginning of our life in Schenectady. But otherwise, the kids were in a great school. I loved the school. I loved everything about it. I really loved the community here. And I, of course, loved the house, Yeah. And so it was a blessing. And everything went along fine for about maybe 2 years or so. And then Bill was working. Of course, he's traveling. He's going every day. He went away for a week and then be home on the weekend. Then he'd go away for another week and then be home on the weekend. Then he'd be home a week. Then he'd use the same cycle. So we didn't see a lot of him. He wasn't really here a lot. But anyway, everything worked out. Now, we had no car. He had to learn how to drive.
Wow.
Which he did. And he finally got a car from the company, but he had to use the car. And then I finally learned how to drive, but that took a while. But it took a while for us to get a car, We just didn't have the money, we couldn't do it. And I used to walk up to the Price Shop or the A&P at that time with my little shopping cart, and get my food. But anyway, we managed, and everything went really well. And but then he started getting sick. Then he had a slip disc and had surgery. Then he got over that, and then he had cancer of the kidney, and he had to have that removed. Then he slipped and fell across the street and cracked his head, was knocked unconscious, and that was Christmas Eve. He spent Christmas Eve in the hospital, came home Christmas Day, and then 5 months later had a grand mal seizure. And then, it just went like that. These are a few years in between with everything. But then it got to the point where he had a pain in his leg. And when they got examined, he had cancer of the bone. So that was the beginning of the end, And he died at the age of 48. He was very young.
Are you not in awe of this woman? Can you imagine how far she's come from that crippling time in her 20s to where she is in the story at this point? Now remember, she's only in her 40s. She still has more than half of her life to come. But we're leaving her off as a widow with 5 teenagers at home. Where does the story go next? Well, I can promise you some of the very best, most inspiring parts of Joan Spelter's life are still to come. So please join us next week as we continue to bask in the wisdom of this matriarch and all that her life has to teach us. God bless you.